The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Shalom and welcome to the SINagoguge. This is a podcast for consenting adults for information, education, and entertainment on BDSM, sexuality, and all things related. If you're not a legal, enthusiastically consenting adult, then
pick up the needle, press pause, or turn the radio off.
For those who remain, now might be a good time to switch to your headphones.
Welcome to the SINagoguge. I am your host, and they call me the Rabbi.
Pretty fly for a rabbi.
I put the sin in synagogue, and I am a cisgender, ambimorous, gynesexual, sadistic, bratty, daddy doll. Sex therapist by day, kink educator by night, and in both these roles, I help people make their kink a religious experience. While I am a mental health professional, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a replacement for therapy. Seek out the assistance of a trained professional for help with your specific situation. Hosting with me today is my partner, my ADHD squirrel wrangler, my submissive, my brat, my little, my pony, or just My Little Pony. Aww.
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 The Gretel to my Hansel, little bit.
The what?
Gretel to my Hansel.
Oh my gosh.
Is this your anniversary or something?
No.
Okay.
This is episode number 14, and with us today is Griot Onyx to talk to us about the topic of aging in the community and becoming an elder. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Geritol. Metamucil. Aspercream. And Tums.
Those are several words.
Well, those are all products for the elder community. I mean, I see those commercials all the time. What was the other one? Did I say Geritol?
Yep.
Oh,
Depends.
Doan's pills. I forgot about Doan's pills. Remember those?
Yeah. Oh God, you're making me age myself.
Well, I'm right there with you.
Griot Onyx is an associate member of ONYX Great Lakes, program committee chair with the Cincinnati Black Pride, freelance writer for the Buckeye Flame, owner of racxposure photography, co-host of Cincinnati Black Pride's podcast, owner/producer of Tri-State Leather, Pup, and Rubber, Mr. Ohio Valley Regional Leather Pride 2009, founding member and former president of Scorpius of Southwest Ohio, former diversity consultant with the Cincinnati Police Training Academy, and former programmer for Alternating Currents, a queer radio program. Thank you for being here in the SINagoguge. Let's talk about aging in the community and becoming an elder.
Hey,
Okay,
thank you.
So, yeah, tell me about that. I don't know anything. I'm too young. Tell me what that's like.
I don't know. I think you got a couple years on me, so you know.
Okay, fine. I guess I'll be the subject then.
So let's start with how long have you been into the community?
Well, that's a good question because I guess officially, how do I describe this? I was just talking about this the other day. I ran for my first contest. I was 55, so that would have been 2009. Yes, 2008. 2008. But I don't know that that's really when I first officially got involved in the community because I was doing photography for the different area contests before that. Actually, for about 10 years before that. And then my actual I knew about the leather community prior to any of this stuff. In the 70s, I knew about, there was a leather club here, Sin City. And so I knew about the club. I knew some of the people that were in the club. But at that particular point in time in the 70s and the 80s, leather clubs were by invite only, and I was never invited to join the club. So I was never really that involved with them. I kind of was I was on the periphery. You know, I would go to, well, I would hang out with my friends, and by default, they would be Kingsters and leather folks, but I was not a part of that particular clique. Let me put it that way.
Gotcha.
And then, and it really wasn't until I decided to run for the contest that I actually got involved in the community. Because again, I was on the outskirts, you know, being the photographer. Even though I was in the middle of things, I wasn't involved in the things. I was capturing images of them, kind of getting an idea of what was expected in those types of things. And then I decided to get the experience of competing and being in front of the camera as opposed to behind the camera. But I can tell you at this point in this juncture that the leather community is very different than the contest community. And for me, they are not the same thing. They just are not. I think the contest community has its own set of rules and expectations and behaviors and shit that comes along with that isn't necessarily part of the leather community per se. Because if you take the contests out of the mix, I think it's a whole different community. So I would say anywhere from let's say 20 years. I'll just leave it at that.
That's fair.
Well, because I'm fit. I did my first contest at 55. I'm 70 now, going to be 71. So that's 15, 16 years. But again, I was involved with it prior to that. So
yeah,
I would say 20 to 25 years.
Okay.
And that's a nice solid number.
That works.
And what kind of changes have you seen in the community in your many years?
Oh my gosh. Well, they say the more things change, the more they stay the same. I've seen it be more open in terms of gender. I've seen it be more inclusive in terms of identities. I've seen it become more, I've also seen it become less inclusive. I think I've seen it become more cliquish. And I think particularly, and I can say this having been a title holder and running a contest, I think that whole energy around, being in contests and being title holders, that sets up a whole group of people that, kind of tend to hang around and hang out together and socialize, but it doesn't necessarily include the people who aren't in that particular space or, haven't competed. So I think sometimes people feel left out. So there's that kind of energy. So, I see that, and I see, but even with that, I'm also seeing people some places are putting less emphasis on contest. And I think producers and people who do the contest are rethinking them because the younger people that are coming in don't have the same emotional energy attached to the contest and the sashes and leather, and they just see it a whole different way than people my age do. Because I think just because, you get new ideas, you get fresh ideas, people have different constructs and concepts of life and, our place in society. So it forces change. And I think that, we're trying to figure out what that change is going to be. And, it's really hard to define a community because when you say the leather community or the kink community, I mean, that is so broad. That's like saying, the sky. It's like, that is so vast and so big. I think that's a hard thing to define. But I also think that, as we try to do that, and I think we can define it for ourselves within our own, well, even, I'm going to say in our own community, but I think it boils down to our own little constellation of the people that we interact with. I mean, that's our community. I think, the people that we interact with on a regular basis, the places and people that we go to for support. And you were talking about people coming to contests, not necessarily because they're fans of the event. It's where they can connect with like-minded people and they see some of their friends. But then, you look at people who go out to social hours or just go hang out for brunch or go hang out for dinner or, go bowling together or those types of things. I mean, all those little constellations of people, those are communities too. So, I think that it would be important to look at how you get your support and where you get your support from those smaller groups. And then you take that energy back out into the larger community. I think I just babbled, but okay, that's all right. I'm 70, so I'm allowed.
You're allowed. You're good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Because I think we spend so much time trying to define it, and then but not everybody is going to fit under that umbrella. And I think as we've gone on and grown, more people are beginning to understand that you don't fit. Not everybody's going to fit under that umbrella, no matter how inclusive, no matter how much we try to be include people or diversity and things like that. And I'm not saying don't try for those things. And as I'm saying this, I'm like I have to be very careful because I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But I also think that in terms of, and this is just where I am, and that's one of the pluses of being an elder. It's like I can't control what other people do and how other people respond to that. All I can do is create my own little world that I feel safe in and that I can feel protected by, and people that I will protect in. And it's not the larger community, and that may only be like 10 or 12 people, but that's my community. And that's where I get those things. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the larger community, because what I found is the more that I wait for those affirmations, the more that I wait for that positive feedback or pats on the back or those types of things that come from the larger community, they don't come at all. Or they don't come necessarily as frequently or as intensely as I might need in any particular given time. So, I have to look at those, where can I get that on a smaller scale, as opposed to looking at it when you walk into let's say to Argos in Dayton and they're, hi, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. I don't know those people. Yeah. Most of the people in the bar now, I have no clue who they are. So, that's just not going to happen. And I think some of that is, as I've gotten older, I've kind of, I don't want to say aged out, because that sounds almost like a conscious thing. And at some level, I guess it might be. But I think in terms of the activities and the events and those types of things, they're not geared toward 70-year-old people. They really are not. So some of that is just by default. It's like when we were up in Dayton, it's like it took everything that I could do to stay awake until midnight to be able to say, okay, it's time for me to go. I mean, I wanted to be there to be supportive, but I knew that I wasn't going to last that long, just because that, my energy was getting like that as Tri-State was ending. And it was really an effort to be out till, 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning during those contest weekends. It's like, oh my God, and then having a week and a half of recovery time. It's like, I can't keep doing this. And I take care of myself. I eat better. I don't eat, healthy 24/7, but I eat better than I try to eat healthy, get my rest, exercise, but it wears me out. So, I can't do that anymore. So, you're looking for different ways to get the things that I used to get when I was able to, get ready to go out at 9 o'clock and leave my house at 10 o'clock and come home at 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't do that anymore, at least not on a regular basis. And even going to Dayton next weekend, I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? How is this going to work? Do they have and sometimes I think, well, maybe they should have a video set up so that, people who can't be there, I can go on screen and say, hey, how you doing? Congratulations, blah, 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 blah. And, I don't have to leave my house.
Sure.
And that's probably a little antisocial, but hey.
I was going to say.
And not because I don't want to be there. It's just because I just know that, I get there at 9, quarter of 10, 10 o'clock, I'm ready to go. It's like, okay, I've been here for an hour. I'm tired. I want to go home now. Mm-hmm. So, and that's not it's not exactly what you call a partying mindset.
Well, this is true.
Fair.
I know, I sound like an old person, don't I?
So how would you define being an elder in the community, and what does it mean to you emotionally, personally?
Oh, God. How do I define being an elder in the community? I think when I think of the word elder, I think of experience. And, and I think we tend to look at those things in a very linear way. So we tend to, when we think of elder, we think of age, like people have been in the community for a long time. And there are people who are younger than me that have been in the community a lot longer than I have. So, elder is probably much more experience based, at least in my mind, than time or, measurable time like hours or weeks or years. I think it's just more experience. And, some people, have been in a let's say a power dynamic since the age of 18. And so, and they're in their 60s now. So 48 years or 42 years, they've been in that dynamic. So, they would be elders. Or somebody had started at 17 in that dynamic and they're 35 now. That's 18 years. And so, somebody, depending on how you measure it, for me, it's been 15 years. Like I said, if I, started at 55. So, I guess elder is about experience. Elder is about wisdom. So people can bring wisdom to the table that aren't necessarily, didn't come from age, but it came from life circumstances. So being able to use that wisdom in a way that's beneficial for not just them, but for other people. But, my wisdom, I have to look at it from the standpoint of age because, like I said, I'm going to be 71 and I still think I'm the most inexperienced person in the world in the leather community just because I don't, I'm not as immersed in it as other people are. It's a part of my life, but it's not my entire life, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And so, but I also think in terms of I'm trying to figure out being an elder in the community, what that means for me right now, because again, this is, it's kind of like getting, it's a new identity, it's a new focus, it's a new mindset, and trying to figure out how that works for me and what that is for me and where and how does it fit into the larger community, or even if it does. I mean, and I think that's the hard part, because I'm finding out that there are parts in terms of just where my own development is as far as me being a human being, in terms of my spirit, it doesn't necessarily dovetail with the community, and having to be learning how to be okay with that, and realizing that there's not necessarily anything wrong with either the community or me, just that, there'll be places where we intersect and there'll be places where we, diverge. I mean, I think that's just part and parcel of life and just being a part of any group or organization like that. So, did I answer your question?
I think so.
Well, I was going to say, as a younger, just younger age-wise, but then as a younger person involved in the community, I joined in later than you did, actually, apparently not too much farther later than what you did, that, it's just one of those things that you from, my perspective of, oh, hey, it's, somebody who's been in longer than I have, somebody who's been doing the things longer than I have and have seen different things and have seen the different changes. And so, it's that for me on my end, this is a bit of a history, a bit of a, hey, these were some positives that you've experienced, or hey, these are some of the negatives, like y'all should avoid this. That type of thing. And I think that sometimes kind of comes along with being an elder in the community as well.
Well, and as much as people are going to pay attention to that, because, people will say, well, we're doing it better. And part of me has to really not get irritated with that.
Yeah,
it's
that's
kind of
fair.
like, okay. But I think, in the back of my mind, it's like, well, yeah, and I'm sitting here, I'm a boomer and I have no problem acknowledging that, and I can own that. I am grateful for where I was born on the wheel, and nobody is going to bash me or be negative about my being a boomer, because boomers brought a lot to the table. And I'm glad I was born when I was born, because that added to my ability to be an activist, just because of when I was born. Being born, I wasn't born in the 60s, I was born in the 50s, but, coming of age during the civil rights movement, coming of age right as Stonewall was happening. I mean, that put me, even though I was not directly involved in those things because I was still in school, but I was aware of those things. And that energy was very much a part of my developmental years. So, being able to use that as I came out of the closet. I mean, and I tell people this, it's like if I shouldn't say if, but being involved in the civil rights struggle, when I say it that way, meaning just being born and living and going to school and, all the things that were going on at that time with the Civil Rights Act of let's take your pick, 63, 65, 63, 65, or 68. Being a part of that, Martin Luther King, that energy and that mindset made it so much easier for me when I came out of the closet. It's like, oh, really? I got this. I mean, if I can survive racism, I can survive homophobia, because, racism will hit you in the face because, they physically see who I am and what I am when they see me. Whereas, my kink side or my gay side or those types of things, unless I'm flagging or unless I'm giving you that information, you have no idea. So,
Sure.
it makes it a lot, it just made it a lot easier for me to come out of the closet and be outspoken about those things, and even getting involved in the kink and leather community. It's like, this is nothing. This is easy. And that's really just been my attitude. And I think if there was anything that I relish about being older, is that, I've had that much time to let that sense of me percolate and develop and what do you call it? I'm going to say fester, because that sounds negative. It's not festering. I think it's more so, let's just say marinate, because, like you put steak in the refrigerator, you put sauce on it before you put it on the grill, let it marinate for a couple of days, and then it's really, really good. So this kind of stuff has been marinating for all these years. So, in my elder years, hopefully, it'll add that special flavor, I guess, or it'll make it that much more palatable, just because of the marination that has gone on and activities and things like that over the years. I mean, that's.
So other than the time of day issue we talked about earlier, what other issues come from aging in the community?
Again, I think identity, because, as much as we'd like to think that we don't negate our own experiences, I think we do. I mean, I like to think of myself as being this open-minded person in terms of age. I can do anything at any age. It really shouldn't matter. But I'm also realizing that, there are some limits, in terms of what I can and cannot do anymore. And it's frustrating. And to give you an example, and this is not a kink-related thing, but I had gone on a kayaking excursion with a group of people who were younger than me. And, kayaking's not that strenuous. I figured I could do it, and, and did it, and no problems. I'd never done it before. Got to the end of the ride, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, now I have to get out of this thing. So, having to think about those types of things in terms of, okay, and even like at the gym, when I get down on the floor and do floor exercises, I always tell people, it's like, I need to have an escape plan. It's like, how am I going to get back up? Getting down is not the problem. Getting back up is the problem. So, you find out those limitations. Your body doesn't, and just, identifying as an older, with an older body as opposed to a younger body, and a lot of it's vanity, getting used to gray hair, getting used to, going to the doctor. But in the community per se, I think, again, people tending to be a little bit more, maybe standoffish. I mean, a little bit invisible, in terms of, being seen as a sexual being, unless somebody has as much as I don't like to use the term grandpa, because I think I've aged out of daddy.
I don't know. You might still fall in there.
Well, yeah, I think I'm at the outer parameters of that. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
So, but then, you get into the grandpa thing, and then, people, there's a whole different mindset when you hear grandpa. And I'm just like, and that's not how I see myself. I still see myself as being this younger, virile, hot man. But then when I think of grandpa, I think of my dad and what he was like. And I'm like, oh no, that is not who I am. That is not what I'm about. So, and I think part of me, I don't, and it could be that I'm just not out enough, but I don't see people that I can relate to in terms of just my age. Because most of my friends are in their 40s and their 50s. And, that's a whole different energy than 70. I mean, and for 70, I have a lot of energy, but I don't have the energy of a 40-year-old, at least not for long, like maybe 45 minutes. But after that, I'm shot. I can't. It's like, nope, can't do that. So, there's that part of it. I think that, and this is what I'm trying to think, what has my experience been? And I mean, I can talk about stuff that I've read, but in terms of just my own experience, it's really not necessary. I mean, people are friendly, but it's that polite friendly, if that makes any sense. Hi, how you doing? Kind of like, are you having aches and pains? Are you are you getting around okay? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you taking your pills? Or are you going to be cranky today? So it's sometimes it's that kind of attitude. I think that I think people tend to dismiss us or I'll say me, just because of the fact that I am a boomer, automatically there's a certain mindset about me because they know that I'm a boomer and they expect these things from me. And, and sometimes I deliver it. I mean, there's no question about that. But I'm also open and realize that I need redirection sometimes because I don't know all these things. And sometimes I slip and sometimes I forget. And so I don't know that people understand that not all boomers are built the same. And, and I don't necessarily have a desire to go back to the way things were, because in my mind, the way things were not a whole lot of fun. There was racism, there was segregation, there was violence, I don't want to go back to that. So but at the same time, I have those experiences that I carry with me in present time. So it kind of shapes my perspective, and it shapes my ability to interact with other people, or willingness sometimes to interact with other people, and realizing that at this age, being, a Black, queer, kinky person, in a straight white world, I've been put through the ringer, and and
I can imagine.
I've been through the ringer. I won't say I've been put through the ringer. I would just say I have been to the ringer, and it's not just living life and doing the things that I want to do, and just at this juncture realizing that I have some healing to do, a whole lot of healing to do, and I think being able to acknowledge that. You're aware of, the 12-step programs, and just that whole idea of you have to, before you can fix the problem, you have to acknowledge that there is a problem. So, and that's been a hard thing for me to acknowledge, that I've been impacted by all this stuff. Cause I like to think of myself as, I'm Teflon, this stuff did not stick, I didn't absorb it, none of that stuff. Well, even Teflon scratches, So
right.
I've gotten, with those scratches, some of that stuff has gotten in me, and I carry some of that. It's like, and I know what that sounds like, and I know what that feels like, and I don't like that about myself, and I'm trying to work through that. I don't like that. That's been the result of some of my experiences, and I'm trying to figure out how to take that straw and spin it in the gold, because I think that there's some gold nuggets in there. I just have to dig them out, and be willing to do that. And I think that's one of the beauties. That's part of the beauty of being an elder, because I can step back from things and kind of look at what has transpired and what is transpiring, and make a decision in terms of how and when and in what way I'm going to respond, or even if I respond at all. I don't have to, Sure. So that's the beauty of as I've gotten more into my elder years, the beauty of it's like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I can, and then at the same time, I can be like a church elder. I can sit there and fuss. It's like, oh, who do you think you are? Look, what are you wearing that for? In my mind, and maybe with some other elders, but I think I'm learning the art of a different way of sharing. Let me put it that way.
That's fair.
Sharing my opinion, sharing my thoughts, and not being quite so. I don't want to say argumentative, because at least in my mind, I've never been argumentative, but, I can push back.
Of course.
And, finding a way to push back that isn't quite so aggressive and isn't quite so confrontational, I guess, because I think there's enough confrontation that, people get into that, fight or flight mindset, that we need to be much more of a, let's solve the problem mindset, to a point. I mean, sometimes I'm like, I don't really care. I don't care if we ever solve that problem because you're assholes. But I think
some problems eventually will fix themselves. It'll be all right.
Well, yeah, it's like, it'll take care of itself. I don't have to do anything. Even though it's getting worse, I'll just let it go.
Yeah, they every once in a while, it's one of those like, is this one of the ones that'll just kind of come out in the wash? I just need to have some patience. I'm not exactly going to help it along, but I'm not exactly going to
Yeah, and it's like, and just like I was saying before, is that my problem to fix?
No.
Well, but I think in terms of those are the questions that I ask myself in terms of, what are my boundaries? Where, when I've had enough, and what does that mean and what does that look like? And so, picking and choosing my battles.
Sure.
Yeah, how do I spend my energy? Because, I'm on short time. I'm not going to live another 70 years, I don't think.
I mean, you could.
I could. It was like, that's a little scary. But, and if I could live another 70 years and be in the condition that I am right now, that would be great. But somehow being 140 years old just doesn't look that way to me. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm sitting here and being 70 years old, I didn't think that this is what 70 looked like either. But, here I am. So hopefully I'm answering your questions. I feel like I'm, again, just kind of babbling on here about stuff.
I believe you answered it.
Okay. Will you say that? So, does that mean that I answered it, or you believe I answered it?
That's my therapist response to it's never a solid yes or a solid no. There is some wiggle room in there.
Okay, well, having been a therapist and kind of understand a little bit more about what you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that's a good hedge, but okay. I do the same thing with my therapist, so he'll ask me questions, and then I talk, and then I'm like, did I answer your question? Because I can pontificate, I can own that, and I know I can do that. So if I start to do that, just bring me back on topic.
Definitely do that. So it seems so far you've experienced some, let's call it gentle ageism, the concerns about your health and whatnot. Have you experienced less gentle ageism?
Oh, I was told that I aged out of the demographic.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, that I no longer fit the demographic.
The demographic of what?
The community.
What?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's ooh.
Oh yeah. And, and if there's a reason why I will not connect with that group of people, so yeah. And I think part of me was, and still, it's like, okay. Now, because in my mind, all these things that older people, black people, queer people aren't supposed to do, it's like, I'm doing them. And doing them quite well. And you are telling me that because you don't like what I'm doing, or you're jealous of what I'm doing, I don't fit the demographic. You believe it should be you doing this stuff as opposed to me. And, in essence, you're doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. It just the difference is that you didn't come up with the idea. I came up with the idea, but I don't fit the demographic anymore.
Hey, for ageism.
Yeah. So, there's that. I think that, even looking at advertisements, I don't see older daddies on any of these posters. I don't see, they're visually, and I, even with because I'm on the board of I was on the board of Caracol, our HIV service provider here, and I was bringing that up in board meetings. It's like, we talk about PrEP and we talk about safer sex and we talk about all these things, but when I look at the advertisements and I listen to conversations, somehow the cutoff is 50. And it's like, I can tell you that 50 plus year old people, particularly gay men, it's like, we're having sex. I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, like big time. I mean, so but somehow we're left out of the prevention, the healthy kind of stuff, because our and at some level it's true. We're dealing with different life issues. We're not dealing with end of life issues, but we're dealing with having lived a life issues, if that makes any sense. Because I'm not dying. I'm just getting older. So again, being able to sit back and having the opportunity to do that, sit back and think about it, look at and I think what I'm experiencing right now is being able to and have the opportunity to shed some of the stuff that I took on to be able to be accepted by people, and be much more willing to be who I really am, and rediscovering that, I think, is more the key here, is rediscovering that, because you really don't realize how many layers you put on just to be able to function in, whether it's the larger society, even in the community, be it the kink community, the black community, the gay community, all of the above. You put on these personas to be able to function, and then you get out of those environments, you get out of the situations. You don't need those covers anymore, so you start to take them off, and some fall off easily, some you have to pry off. And some it's like, is this ever going to come off? It's like, oh my God, this is like grafted into my skin. This is not a good thing. But it's an opportunity to do that if you decide to do it. And so, I've decided that's what I want to do, to get back to I guess my true spirit, whatever that is. I mean, and figuring out what that is, and, and embracing that as I go through that process.
Oh, that doesn't sound like a bad process of, like, continuing exploring who you are as, you are getting older, and, figuring out what rings true, now compared to before, as to, what meets the needs of ringing for your authentic self.
Exactly. And understanding that who I was when I first started on this journey, and I'm going to go back to when I first came out of the closet at the age of 19, is not who I am at 70, and nor should I be. And there were two things that I saw, on Facebook, and people, and you have to be really careful with Facebook or any of the social media things, because it's kind of like, but there was a meme about, oh God, let me think of it. And if I wasn't trying to think of it, I would be able to. Being able to get back in touch with your real self. Oh, well, here's one. It says, as you focus on cleaning your generational trauma, do not forget to claim your generational strengths. Your ancestors gave you more than just wounds. That really struck me this morning. So that is a lot of, I wouldn't say what I'm doing, but I think it's a lot of what I'm doing. But I've always had that mindset. People will define, oh, you're in the kink, and that's a negative thing. Or even people are embarrassed about their kinks, or being in the leather, or being a submissive, or being a dom, or identifying as a pony or a pup, or any of that kind of stuff. This is not new in the community. People have been doing this for eons. But there's also strengths that come along with being able to live firmly in your identity, and to, as they say, speak your truth and to live your truth. And so that is extremely important. And then the other one was, maybe you're not healing because you're trying to be who you were before the trauma. That person doesn't exist anymore, because there's a new you trying to be born. Breathe life into that person. And so right now what I'm trying to do is breathe life into that person who's trying to be born from the experiences that I've had up to this point, that has led me to be able to be reborn, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where those are the two things that are the mindsets that I'm operating from right now, is looking at those strengths, because I really have fought, and probably why I get so upset when people bring that negativity to me in terms of like when they were saying it's like you don't fit the demographic. See, these to me are gifts. Being born black is a gift. Being born gay is a gift, and now being 70 is a gift. And because I think of the people in my life that didn't make it to 70, and it wasn't necessarily about HIV, but life just they just didn't make it. I just saw online today where this young man that I had interacted with through ONYX Great Lakes, and he was in his 30s. He died, and
Oh, goodness.
I suspect I have my suspicions about how he died. Meaning, I think he might have taken his own life, and I don't know that for sure. But at the same time, it's like that always like strikes a nerve with me, because the agony and the pain and the suffering that people have to be going through that would make them want to end their life. That is, I've never experienced that level of pain in my life, and hopefully I never will. But at the same time, that's just a hard thing for me to imagine having to live like that, if that makes sense. Again, and I'm not taking away from people who make those decisions, because those are not easy decisions. And on some level, with HIV, there are people that I didn't hand them the device to do it with, but they asked me to be silent about what they were going to be doing, and I did do that. Just because that's what they wanted, and I wanted to respect that. But I think that, I don't know, I think it's just one of those things that it's just hard to in a world that's giving you the messages that you have no value, to continue to give yourself and try to find those people in your life and in your community or in your group that will also provide you with those affirmations and the support, and as the children like to say, you feel seen. That is really key. And seen in a positive way. People can see you in a negative way. You're old, or you're fat, or you're this or you're that. People can see you in that way, but in terms of seeing you in a way that's affirming, we like your energy, we like your presence. I had posted, it came up in my timeline, and I ran into a friend, and this was a few years ago. Ran into a friend of mine in the grocery store. We were just standing there talking, and out of the clear blue sky, he just looked at me and says, I enjoy your company so much. It was spontaneous. It was it was heartfelt, and and to this day, and that was 6 years ago, I still remember that encounter. And
That's a good thing.
That made me, I felt seen. I felt appreciated, and I felt valued, and I felt important. And I think that the more that we can do that as a community, and I think the more that we can do that in our chosen families, and and when we choose our families, those, that be some of the criteria, as opposed to, how many titles somebody has, or, who they know, or how many followers they have on Facebook or whatever social media. I think that's a change that I've seen. It's much more about your likes and the numbers of people that you have following you around, as opposed to, who you are as a person. I think that for me as a producer, and as a title holder, I kind of have been of the mindset, you can either be popular or you can be purposeful. Ideally, it would be both, but since we're dealing with binaries right now, and I will always choose purposeful, because that's what speaks to my spirit, and that's not everybody's spirit, and and for me, learning to be able to allow the space for people who really just want to be popular, and that there's not necessarily anything inherently wrong with that. Doesn't do much for building the community. You build your brand and you build your popularity, but I just have to be able to step back and allow that space to exist, because it really does, and both those things can exist in the same space, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
That's there's the wisdom of aging, and it took me 70 years to get to that point, and it still sticks in my craw sometimes, but it's the reality of it. It's the truth.
Well, I mean, it's that whole meeting people where they are. It's the whole finding the people who are a match and a fit for you, that support you, and not just are like paying lip service, but as you said, they make you feel seen,
exactly,
valued and appreciated, and all of that, and that's rather important. And it also is that whole, as you said, where do you want to be? And it does take a moment to be like, okay, to step back and to say, oh, this person's popular, because that fits for them. And it's okay to be, of course, to say, well, that's not me. But sometimes the popular people help bring in at least curious onlookers. It's some of the people who are, it was something of, I learned a little bit ago of, hey, we sometimes need some of the people that are be like, ooh, it's bright, it's new, it's shiny. In order to get other people to kind of look and support that might not have realized, because they've gotten bogged down about different things too.
Right. Well, and I think as long as there's that purposeful backup there, I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that, because in my mind, popular is a lot less important than purposeful. But that's a judgment in my head, and that isn't necessarily the case for everybody. And the community is not one size fits all. And
Definitely.
I think that on both those, it's kind of like talking about Republicans and Democrats and progressives and things like that. As people will say, the left wing and the right wing, you're on the same bird, so. So
y'all still got to fly it,
and you got to fly it. Yeah. You got to fly it. You got to feed it. You got to land, you got all those things. And so the community is the same way, popular or purposeful. I mean, we're wings on the same bird. So, how do you work together to keep the bird in the air, to keep the bird fed, and to keep the bird flying? And, so it is, how do those two things work together?
And as you mentioned before, some of it intersects and some of it's, branches off in order to be able to do its own thing.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think, again, this is part of some of the things that people say about people as they get older. Some of it's true. Well, you become a little bit more opinionated about things. In some ways, you become a little bit more, at least as much as I try not to, I can probably be rigid about some things. Like, well, that's just not right, blah, 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 but I'm also very keenly aware of my mindset right now is I have fought my entire life. I really want to spend the rest of the days that I have here on this earth in peace. And that doesn't mean I won't have conflict, but, being at peace with myself, being at peace with how things are, whether I like them or not, really doesn't matter. I just have to make peace with this is the way things are right now. And it will change eventually. It may change in my lifetime. It may not change in my lifetime. And I have to be okay with that. Part of me, when I first started off in life's journey and growing up in the 60s, I thought, well, by the time I get to be, and I've always wanted to be older. So, I'm at a point in my life where I've always wanted to be here. I don't know what to do with it necessarily, but I've always wanted to be here.
Right.
But, thinking about it from the standpoint of being able to pick and choose my battles. And, I feel like I have jumped through enough hoops. I have proven myself enough that I don't have to fight anymore. It's like, I'm not doing that. It's like, I'm just living my life. I'm just being who I am. Either you like it or you don't. And if you like it, then, come on the bus. If you don't like it, then, catch the next one, because you're not welcome on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need it. Don't want it, don't need it, and not going to put up with it.
Okay.
So what is something you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your journey?
That's interesting. I'm going to say that's a hard one, just because through all this, I've been a social worker through all of it. So some of this is like, I know this stuff through, and I have to be very careful, because people will tell me that I do these things because I was a social worker, but it's more, I was a social worker because this is just how I think about things. So social work did not frame my experience. I framed my social work experience based on my own spirit and how I view the world. The people really aren't paying that much attention to you. They're not paying attention to you. When we get into this mindset about being concerned about what people think,
Mm-hmm.
you're not that important. People don't care. People aren't necessarily watching you in terms of what you do. I've learned this. Sometimes I go over this thing in my head when I get ready to go to the gym. I really kind of go to the sometimes to uncomfortable lengths to figure out, well, what am I going to wear? Are they going to look at this? Is this the right T-shirt? Just all this kind of stuff. And then I put it on. Nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention. It's not that important. And if they do, they don't say anything. So being able to understand that, you're not the center of attention. The world does not revolve around me.
Sure.
Which is, kind of a double-edged sword.
Fair.
Yeah, because you want the attention, but at the same time, you're not that important that people are going to, spend 24/7 fretting over you and worry about what you're doing. And if they do, that would be problematic. But people just aren't. People aren't that invested in what you're doing. They don't care. They really don't care. So I wish I'd known that a long time ago, and I think that would have shaped and framed some decisions that I made, that I would have made, but have ultimately made different decisions, and that it's going to be okay. Because what I've discovered, that even with things that I just thought, this is just untenable, I'm never going to make it through this. This is the most god awful thing that's ever happened to me. Mm-hmm. I can't go on. If this doesn't end soon, I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah, it will be okay. You will get through it, and you'll come out the other side a changed person, hopefully for the better. And I think those need to be conscious decisions, because again, it's like I'm saying now, looking at, how do I turn the straw that are my life lessons and some of the things that I've gone through. How do I turn this into gold? So, being able to transform it into something that's positive and constructive, and that you do have the ability to do that. I think one of the things that, I've known this, but I've just never really done it because I always thought it was stupid. There's a part of me that really still thinks it's stupid. Those affirmations, they drive me crazy you're special and worthwhile and you deserve the very best. Those T-shirts and slogans that people say, put on your mirror.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just roll my eyes think, how stupid is that? But they work.
Yeah, they do.
They do. It's empowering. It's calming. It's affirming. So they work. So I think being able to understand that I need to be less dismissive of some things. And I've been this way since I was in my 20s. When I first started college, they had those T-shirts, and it drove me absolutely crazy. Like, why do people need that stuff? And so here we are, fast forward, 45 to 50 years later. It's like, oh, this is why they do that. Okay, I get it now. So, again, what am I, being able to enjoy the rest of my time here, being able to look in the mirror and be affirming. And the one thing that I will say that, and I think that's but the irony of it, that, people talk about getting older and, the things that you lose, and you get wrinkles and you get gray hair, you're not as attractive. I'm actually able to look in the mirror at 70 plus years old, and for the first time in my life, actually like what I see, like the person that's staring back at me, and can appreciate what they look like, who they are, and what they've gone through. That is the first time since I've been alive.
Awesome.
Congratulations. That's a good thing.
That's a very good thing. I've always been a late bloomer, so.
Well, some people never reach that.
Some people never reach that. I liken myself to I'm a century plant. I'm blooming at 70 as opposed to, the spring blooms. I'm a century plant. I bloom every 50 to 100 years.
Well, that means you still have time. Bloom again.
Well, exactly. The blooms are just starting to form on these stems. So, yep, I'm looking forward to looking at them and smelling them, so to speak. Sorry.
You're fine.
Well, and I'm chuckling, thinking, you didn't ask me about kinks, but, I've been going back and forth with this guy online about, smells. Both have that kink, and it's kind of like so it's just that being able to be comfortable with that and not run away from it, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, because not everybody is into smells, and then at the same time, it's one of those like, all right, which ones are you actually into?
Exactly, figuring that one out. Which ones are you into? And and it's not something for everybody. There are some, like, I've never been in the room with this guy, and, we were talking, and he's like, we can do this, this, and this. And finally I said, we probably should be in the same room at some point in time to really see how this is going to work, but okay. We can talk dirty all you want, but, when the rubber needs to meet the road at some point. But, that's not, I'm pretty selective sometimes, and it's not necessarily that it's a conscious thing. It's just that my spirit or my senses are just selective. What I might appreciate as a smell from one person may not work with another person, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, body chemistry and like how you respond to another person's body chemistry is a whole absolute thing.
Exactly.
And
exactly. So it's not a, and I think that's what I've been like with all of my kinks. What I enjoy, I don't enjoy that with everybody.
Sure.
Just because is it right with everybody? It has to feel right. And and I don't know that I have a people say, what are you into? And it's like that's a broad spectrum. But it's also selective to the individuals. There might be something I'm into with one person that I would do with one person that I wouldn't do with somebody else.
Oh yeah.
And then even with that same person, it's like, today I might be into it. Next week it's like, oh no, we're not doing that.
Not today. Today's not it.
Not today, Satan, not today. And I think that's one of the beauties of aging, getting older, is that I'm becoming more comfortable with that. I don't have it. I'm not that. I'm becoming less of that one size fits all, that you have to do these things with everybody, or you kind of have to accommodate other people's needs. And I'm realizing it's like I am not a service top. I get these bottoms that or people that say they're or these men that say they're submissive or they're passive and things like that, but they have a whole list of things that I'm going to do to them. And it's like, so you're submissive from the bottom, or you're bottoming, you're topping from the bottom, which is exactly what you're doing. And it's like, and if you're submissive, it's like, where do I fit in this picture? Because if I'm understanding how this works, submissives are, and they get pleasure out of giving other people pleasure. It's like, my pleasure is not in here. This was about your pleasure.
Sure.
And people get nervous when you point that out to them. It's like, oh, I never meant that. And I'm like, well, yeah, you kind of did.
Otherwise you would have put it.
Well, and again, being a social worker, it's like, yeah, you can say that you didn't mean it that way. It's like, but that's it. You meant what you said. And own it. Don't back away from it. Own it.
Sure. I mean, there may be somebody out there who's like, yeah, this fits, what I want to a T. Cool, no problem. It just may not be, you.
Yeah, it may not be me.
Yeah.
And probably, again, if people are telling me what I'm going to do to them, that is not for me. I don't like to be told what to do. Period. Just no. That's why it's like people ask me if I'm submissive, and I'm like, generally not.
In this lifetime.
I'm sorry?
I said not in this lifetime.
Well, no, I mean, because I have, I guess I'm really not, because I've never really done that and been comfortable with it. It's like I do it because it's like, well, I'll see what this is like with this particular person. And then it's just kind of like, yeah, this isn't quite the flex that people are making it out to be.
Sure.
So, but I believe in, trying things at least once. Some things, like I will never jump out of an airplane, probably, unless, the plane's going down and I have to save my life. But, to voluntarily, like, pay money to get trained to jump out of an airplane, probably not going to happen.
It's a perfectly good airplane. Why do you want to jump out of it?
Yeah. But, zip lining, I would do that in a heartbeat. And I've done hang gliding. But I guess my point in saying this is that, being able to be open-minded enough to try new things, and understand what my limits are, but also wanting to push past those limits. Because I think sometimes with age, because I am a certain age, people, you're the dom or you're the top and things like that. And it's like, sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I just want to suck dick. Yeah, I'm a gay man. Underneath all this stuff, I am a gay man. So it's kind of, I like dick. I'm not going to even pretend like I don't. So, don't pigeonhole me based on what you believe I ought to like.
Sure.
Listen to what I do like, and, and it might be a fit that we can get together, or it might not be a fit. But, don't, because I've been with subs and bottoms that are reluctant to let me indulge in that little thing that I have about sucking dick. And I'm like, well, then we're not going to play. I need to be getting something out of this. I mean, yeah. This is more information than you've probably heard about me, and since you've known me, now you...
I'm of the, like, look, you're a gay man, and, like, I have heard too many men of just being like, I may be a top, but there's every once in a while that I will absolutely get on my knees for some good dick.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Because that is what I'm in the mood for.
Exactly. It's like, I don't let those roles define me.
No. I'm of the, whatever you enjoy is whatever you enjoy. And as long as it's between two consenting adults, who the hell cares?
Exactly. Go with the flow.
And as long as y'all are enjoying yourselves, have at it.
Exactly. It's like, well, I don't give my dick sucked. How do you know if you like? lay back and let a pro show you how it's done. You get these little 20-year-olds that don't know what the fuck they're doing. I've been sucking dick for a long time. I will make your knees buckle.
See, I just saw a meme here recently the other day, which, total side note, was, oh, you have well-defined cheekbones. Thank you, I suck dick properly.
Yeah, I can see that.
So before we move into the part of the show we like to call Inside the Kinkster Studio, is there anything else you'd like to share on being an elder and aging in the lifestyle?
Embrace it. You know, I hear so many people lamenting the fact that they're getting gray hair, or their bones creak when they get up. It's like, I have no silent movements anymore.
Oh no.
And what I mean by that is, I make noise when I get up out of a chair. Within reason. If I'm in public, I try to keep it to a minimum. But when I'm home alone, getting out of the chair, I make noise. Sitting down, I make noise. I don't have the dog anymore, so I can't blame that on her. But, embrace it. I mean, because you figure, I look at the people or think about the people who didn't even make it to 40, much less 70. So embrace your aging, because it's a gift that not everybody gets. And be able to look at yourself as an older person and like what you see, and let go of the ideas that you are losing your beauty because you're losing your youth. I've always liked old houses, and will continue to like old houses. I just think they have character. I think they have spirit, and they have personality. So I consider myself to be like an old house. I'm still standing, and things that were built 100 years ago, it's like my house. It's still standing, so it's sturdy. It's got a good foundation, and you have things fall on it, and things happen to it, but it's still here. Whereas something that was built in the 1970s, they get blown away in windstorms. Trees fall on them, and they're demolished. I've had trees fall on this house. You wouldn't even knew that a tree fell on this house. So I guess that's how I look at my old age. It's like, let those trees fall, because I'm stable. I've been here for a long time, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Embrace your old age, embrace aging, and also avoid using the term old, because old has its own negative connotations. When people say old, that means you're not relevant anymore. You're not useful anymore. But, if you say seasoned, that's a whole nother energy, because season brings at least in my mind, brings the picture of, it's like this meal that you prepared that's seasoned, that you can just dig into it and just enjoy it, because you seasoned it with things that you like and that speak to and feed your spirit. So looking at it from that standpoint, do you all know what pot liquor is? You ever heard of pot liquor?
No.
Do you know what pot liquor is, Beth?
I'm pretty certain that I have, but it's been a very long time.
Well, when people make, like with beans, or if they make collard greens and the seasoning meat and stuff like that, the broth that's left over after it's all cooked, that's pot liquor.
Yep. Yes.
So, and being a kid, I used to watch my mother. She would literally go into the kitchen and scoop the pot liquor out and put it in a bowl, and she would crumble cornbread up in it, and she would sit there and eat it, and she would, literally, she would just start to I'm going to use the term shimmy, but she literally would shake, because it was just that good to her. And and I've done the same thing. I'll sit here with
same.
I just sit here with sometimes with stuff. If I made greens, like if I cook for my aunt and or me too, or beans or something like that, and you get down to the bottom of the pot and you have that pot liquor and you're eating, it's like, oh, this is just so fucking good. Oh my God. And I think for me, that's how I'm looking at my elder years is this. Yeah. This is the pot liquor of my life. Everything is cooked down. This is what I have left. The nourishment, the vitamins, the good flavors, the combination of flavors. I want to use that not just to nourish my soul, but nourish the soul, my soul, the people around me, and the soul of the community.
Nice. I like that.
Okay, so let's now go into the part of the show where we get to know you as an individual a little bit better, not just on the topic of
that
being
didn't tell you about me.
Aging.
Okay.
Are you game for these questions?
I am game. Are you? You just dropped something. Okay.
Tell us about your first kink experience, your first play party, or visit to a dungeon.
God, I was thinking about this question the other day, and I guess there's two things. My first, well, I guess in terms of context, because I had kink experiences when I was a kid, but I didn't know they were kinky. If that makes any sense. But when I came out of the closet, moved to Cincinnati, I forget. Well, there used to be outside of bars where you meet people. People would cruise the parks, but the one place that people would cruise here in Cincinnati was that we called it the Block. It was where the Greyhound bus station used to be, and people would drive around the block in their cars, looking over and nodding and motioning to follow that kind of stuff. Never really a whole lot of conversation, but they got the message. People hooked up. But anyway, I took this guy back to my apartment. Older gentleman, older white guy, actually. And it is germane to the story. And I was working with, and I was with this guy in my apartment, and I had just finished watching the original version of Roots. So that's how long ago that was.
Couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of years. So we're sitting there in my apartment. I did not know anything about this guy at all. Didn't know anything about kink. Didn't know anything about leather. He says, "I'm going to be the master, and you're going to be the slave." Now, in my mind, it was again, I just saw Roots, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And so I was just kind of like, I don't think this is going to happen. So, I mean, we played around a little bit, but I could not get that out of my head. And it's like, we're not doing that. We're not, I'm not a slave. I'm not your slave. And I think what really cinched my decision was that he literally was doing everything. He was checking my teeth. And that was that was too far. It's like, okay, yeah, we're not doing that. We're, particularly since I just seen that particular episode of Roots. So, and at that point in time, I didn't know enough, because sometimes when people are like, you can't discern whether that's, where that was coming from.
Sure.
And again, I did not know anything about master and slave in terms of just the kink dynamic. The only thing that I knew about master and slave at that particular point in time was the race dynamic. And it's like, we are not having anything to do with that. And then I would say it was a few months later. I was, the other places that you could get picked up here would be, there was a place here called the Friars Club.
Interesting.
And it was a Catholic, I think a Jesuit residence. It was kind of like the YMCA, except it was for Catholics.
Okay.
And the thing that was unique about the Friars Club is that on certain nights or certain afternoons, the men could swim naked in the pool.
Huh.
And so they had this nude swimming. And so, and every queen from, a 50-mile radius was at the Friars Club swimming naked in the pool trying to, hook up. But I met this daddy, we cruised each other back and forth, and he was an older guy. I mean, I was in my 20s, maybe. I hadn't started graduate school yet, so I was in my late 20s. He was probably 30s, early 40s. I discovered nipple play.
Ooh.
Oh my God. I had no clue that it, it was like, what? What? I mean, to the point where I was really into it, and just to the point of, you had to put a pillow over my face because I was just that loud about it. So those are the two things that really stand out for me in terms of that beginning of that journey. The rest of them experiences, they've been okay. But I think, as anything, the first time you do something, hopefully it's like the best thing since microwave popcorn, but that's not always the case. But those two things were the things that stood out for me. He wanted. At least I don't think he was in the race play. I don't know, because we didn't go there. But the other one was finding out that my nipples are hardwired.
Oh, that's super fun. That is super fun.
That was a discovery. It's like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know these systems were connected. Now I do.
Now I know.
Now I know, and I'll never look back.
I swear I had this question in mind before I heard that story. From here on out, your nipples have to taste like Doritos. Cool Ranch or regular nacho cheese?
Is there any dipping sauce?
Could be.
Oh, God. Cool Ranch.
Okay.
Rabbi's like, there'll be a quiz on this later.
Yeah.
Cool Ranch with a little salsa on the side.
That works.
Gotta have some dip.
Something.
Yeah, they get dry if you don't. Yeah. Your mouth gets dry, so you gotta have something to kind of mix it with.
There you go. What is the most useless skill you possess?
Well, I think most skills are kind of like they're double-edged swords.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a skill, but a character. I have the memory of an elephant.
Oh.
Which is, people say, oh, that's a good thing. It's like, no, it really isn't.
Not always.
Not always. No, because, the importance, but I remember trivial stuff that it doesn't matter, in terms of the scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. But, not only do I know it, sometimes I'll turn around and obsess over it. So, there's that one thing. Another skill that I have that I can kind of whistle. I used to be able to whistle much better than I can now, and I'm not sure if it's because I'm out of practice or what's happened. But whistling is kind of a useless.
One of those
skill.
things.
Yeah, it's kind of like
yeah.
I'll just call you. Why do I have to whistle for you? If I have to whistle for you, that's a problem.
Fair. All right. So, what is one of your favorite toys that you have ever had in your toy bag?
My cock rings, my ball spreaders, those types of toys. Those are my favorite. I love those things.
Those sound super fun.
It can be. Well, I say it that way because, I'm into it, but, other people, and particularly when you start playing with men's balls, they get a little, anxious. It's like, ooh. It's like, well, don't tell me you're in the cock and ball torture, and then when I touch your balls, you squirm. It's like, stop. That's not helpful. Just breathe. If I'm hurting you, tell you, we'll have a safe word. If I'm hurting you, just use a safe word. But, part of the contract or part of the deal is that, this is going to probably make you uncomfortable. That's the whole idea. Well,
fair.
Well, uncomfortable, pleasurably uncomfortable. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So now you get WWE style entrance music whenever you enter a play space. What is your song and why?
And this is funny because I heard this song yesterday, and it's the first song that I heard when I went to my first gay bar, and that's Fly Robin Fly by the Silver Convention. And it's an old disco song, but, as I listen to the words now, it's kind of like Dick Clark's American Bandstand. Either listen to the words or you listen to the music. And at the time, I was listening to the music, but now I'm hearing the words, and it's like fly, robin, fly, up to the sky, and that's really the whole song. They repeat that over and over again. So I would say that would be my song is Fly, Robin, Fly, up to the sky, because I've learned how to fly, and I want to continue to fly, and how do I get those the popular wing and the purposeful wing to work together so I can keep flying. Are these as juicy answers as you were wanting, or do you want juicier than that? I can give you juicy. But
you can always give as juicy as what you want. It's it's whatever you choose to. It's whatever you choose to tell us.
Well, yeah. No, but that one would be one. Yeah, we'll just stick with that one. That's the one that came. That's the first thing that came. That's the first thing that came to mind. So that's all right. Usually the honest answer.
Yeah. What's the strangest purchase you've ever made?
For as much as I like nipple play, the strangest thing I ever bought is a snake bite kit. They've never really worked for me. They fall off.
Like for the suction stuff?
Yeah. I don't care how much you lick it or shave around the nipple and make sure there's no hair. It always falls off, and I'm like, well, this was just a waste of money. And then you think about it's a snake bite kits. It's like I've never been bitten by a snake. I know the concept of what it's supposed to do, but it's just kind of like, okay, that was a weird purchase. I'm trying to think. Oh, I take that back. When I was first coming out, and there's several purchases, I decided I wanted to buy. I think it was Playgirl, because I think it was Burt Reynolds was the centerfold. And at that point in time, you could actually go to like UDF and buy porn magazines. Yeah. You could buy them, but they were wrapped in brown paper. And I wanted to buy one, so I went to the UDF in my neighborhood. I picked that one up. I had put on my grandfather's wedding band when I went to the store. So I had this wedding band on, and I went in the UDF and I bought a Playgirl magazine and a box of tampons. The tampons were my beard, so to speak, and so was the wedding band. And so I got in the car, and I sat there. I thought, well, that was just stupid. Never did it again after that. I thought, okay, Ron, if you're gonna be queer, be queer. Don't be half-assing this. And I never did that again. I just thought, well, I don't want to be too obvious, and it was the 70s, but Kotex and a Playgirl, or tampons and a Playgirl.
All right, final two questions.
What's your favorite swear word?
Fuck that is my. I tend to be that's my default. Fuck that.
That's a good one.
And then my favorite question to ask: if you had to have sex with one Muppet, which one would it be and why?
Oh God, am I running for a title?
He gives this one to all the title holders, so...
I've judged one contest. You've given it to all the title holders.
No, you've written it down on the slip of paper and been like, here, use this.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, let's see. I have to remember the Muppets. Oh... Who's the grumpy one? Not the old man, but the wild one with all the hair.
Animal?
Animal, yes. I would, and why would I want to have sex with Animal? Because he's Animal.
Because why not?
He's hairy, he's wild, he's unpredictable. He take me places that I'd never thought that I could go, or vice versa.
Fair enough. If somebody wants to contact you or follow you on social media, what's the best way to do that?
Not, but
Not.
Fair.
That works.
I have a Facebook page, and I have my Muggle Facebook page, and I also have my Griot Onyx Facebook page. But if you want to get a hold of me, they can reach me through Griot Onyx, which would actually force me to do something with that page. And I do have it, I can do that with also like Instagram and X too, because I have my Muggle name on both of those. But I can also do that with Griot Onyx, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, probably the best way to get a hold of me Griot Onyx. And that's the other thing I think I found, when you're a producer and even a toddler, it kind of takes you away from the community. You're standing on that. Well, it's not you're standing on the outside, but you're just involved in a different way than if you're just a regular everyday person in the community. And so part of me is looking forward to having a regular experience as opposed to a enhanced experience because of being quote unquote a leader in the community, because people just treat you differently when they see you as a leader. It's like, I just want to suck dick, thinking about camping, it's like all the years that I have been like with Tri-State, I've never gone camping just to go camping. I was always doing a leather weekend, so I was always working. And so, looking forward to just going and hanging out and actually camping and not working, not being a camp counselor. If I can figure out how to do that.
Fair. Bad thing.
And I will throw links to your socials in the show notes.
Okay.
But thank you for coming on the show. You've been a great guest talking to us about aging in the lifestyle and being an elder. For our listeners, upcoming SINagogue classes, in-person and virtual, on chain fisting, electroplay, pony play 201, bratty daddies, and much more. For information on those classes, visit our website. But that's it. That's our show. Say goodnight, little bit.
Good night, little bit.
Good night, little bit.
Follow us on Facebook, FetLife, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube as SINagogue BDSM, and on Instagram and TikTok as SINagogue Kink. If you enjoyed or learned something from this podcast, consider making a donation via PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, or Ko-fi. Username SINagogue, or find those links to all of those on our website, SINagogueBDSM.com. Remember, that's SINagogue with an I. Also on the website, links to past episodes, upcoming classes, book us as educators, shop our store, and more.
SINagogue hosts and guests are subject matter experts but are not the expert. We believe that, outside of violating consent, there is no wrong way to do kink, except to think your way is the only way. This show is presented from a risk-aware consensual kink point of view and not SSC, safe, sane, consensual, because every individual's definition of safe is different based on their own risk profile. The use of the word safe on this show fits our definition of safe, and that does not have to be your definition. Opinions expressed by guests on the show are those of the person expressing the opinion, not of the show.
Just a reminder, we try to make our content as inclusive as possible, regardless of gender, orientation, role in the lifestyle, etc. But we do inherently speak from our own point of view. For the most part, substitute our identity with your own to make it work. We want to know when we make a mistake, so we can learn and grow from those mistakes. So if you feel like we did say something that is genuinely offensive, we encourage you to let us know. Reach out to us with your questions, comments, or concerns via our website or call us at 469-269-0403.
Brought to you today by the letters and the number.
San Diego High School football rule!